Fine. All right, we are live. This is John Delarose, the #1 undefeated Hispanic in science fiction. I'm completely undefeated. And
you are, in fact, the most dangerous Hispanic voice in science fiction ever.
I am the Floyd Mayweather of science fiction. I am the Tom Brady of science fiction. I am the Kanye West of science fiction. And I think that about covers it. Is that pretty good?
The LeBron James of science fiction.
No, I'm not a whiny bitch.
Except without the Chinese worshipping anti-Uyghur aspect.
Right, yeah. Speaking of Chinese worshippers, Mike Gleyer's in the chat. I just want to say hi. I hope all your bots on your website from China are giving you good fake traffic today. So hope all's well.
I want to say hi to Mike Gleyer because, as you know, reading File 770 over the last month or two, I have to say that he was closest to stumbling onto the truth at various points in time. So
yeah, he's very
kudos.
close. It's interesting. So I have a weird relationship with Mike, and I actually think that Mike gets it sometimes, but he's playing to his crowd. And so he does kind of oscillate back and forth between being a reasonable person and then just like trying to dig in for the kudos points from the mob. And so it's a very, very weird deal. So yes, Mike is the purveyor of File 770 for everybody who does not know that. We got to preface this stuff because a lot of people don't know. A lot of comics folk on here, a lot of unrelated folk. Some people just follow me just because, sometimes I talk about Jesus and stuff. But Mike Gleyer runs this website. It's basically a hate gossip website. And all it does is just knock conservative authors. And then then they post awards also. And speaking of which, we missed this weekend in my glee of all of this, Peter. I missed the 56th annual Nebula Awards, and I didn't care. So
that's too bad. I recently picked up off of Amazon, I guess, the 5th Nebula Award winner paperback that I remember reading when I was 11 or 12, and that really dates me because that comes out to about 1969 or 1970. That was the year Harlan Ellison won for A Boy and His Dog, and it had, I remember reading it as a 6th grader, and it had a word that I thought was the past tense contraction for cannot, but years later I found out that in fact it was an entirely inappropriate word for female genitalia. Harlan, the things you would have done to me if I had gone to ask my parents what that word meant. Anyhow, and then it had, The Man Who Loved Loving, or Learned to Love by Theodore Sturgeon, and 9 Hells by Ursula Kroeber Le Guin. And all of those stories stuck out in my mind to this day, 50 years later, and I wonder if there's anything in this current crop that's going to have the same effect on people, and particularly the short story.
The answer is no.
Yeah.
The answer is nobody's going to read these. Nobody will remember any of them in a year, and it's a pointless award of a small circle jerk of people who just are voting for themselves and their friends at this point. And it's sad. And really the attitude, check out this transition. The attitude that WorldCon actually displayed in their hatred of just normal people is really indicative of why the genre is sinking so low in the mainstream capacity. So I'm sad about it. I really hope this is like a first step towards people acting reasonable and stopping the nonsense and just being able to enjoy books and good things again. But I'm unfortunately, I think the result of this is just going to be they're going to be hating on people like myself, like you, like people in the chat, and try to get rid of folk without actually stating why at this point. And so they're just going to just say, well, we're banning you, and no, we're not telling you why. I think that's going to be the result of this, unfortunately.
Okay, well, I wanted to say 2 things in kind of a hands across the water way, because that's kind of the direction I go. Right. And I wanted to say that I talked to you about inviting Mike Gleyer on. I thought it might be a good thing to have Mike Gleyer on, and then he could ask questions in an informed way to clarify the bad echo chamber conclusions that the people in his comment section were reaching, that occasionally he would come out and say, wait a second, look at this. This isn't quite consistent with what you're saying here. But then I wondered whether or not he'd appreciate that, because he'd be consorting with the enemy. And so I thought the better approach would be to say, let's not put him in that bind.
It's fine. I sent him the link. So if Mike does want to pop by, you're absolutely welcome to, Mike. I'd be happy to have you on here. We'll be nice.
Well, you are just an incredibly decent person. I keep saying about you, you are so totally decent. The other thing I wanted to say, since I'm not used to listening and not talking, and we'll have to explain why that is in a few minutes, I guess.
Well, you're a lawyer,
Yeah, that's right. Is the following. It was such an eye-opener for me. Obviously, I'm a science fiction fan. Okay, obviously, I know a lot of inside game stuff from before 1980, basically. But then I had a life, and I would read science fiction, and I had no idea what had happened to science fiction until I think you were the one who pointed out that a Hugo Award winner involved a hate prose poem concerning velociraptors ripping apart rednecks in a pool hall. And correct. I thought, how can that possibly compare to the great stories that I mentioned earlier? Harlan Ellison, Theodore Sturgeon, Samuel R. Delaney's Time Considered as a Helix of Semi-Precious Stones. And I was just shocked.
Harlan Ellison is turning in his grave. And, you know, if he was alive today, he'd be saying these people are a bunch of hacks. They do not even deserve to be published whatsoever. It's really tragic what's happening.
If he had enough courage to, and Harlan, his reputation is that he would have enough courage. But well, they even shut up Mike Resnick, and I forget who his opposite number was. And what I'm saying is, you know, I'm part of the vast penumbra of possible people they should be reaching out to. But when I come back in and I start reading the Hugo Awards and finding out how trashy they really are, how bad they are, and compare them to the earlier ones that were so effective for me as a nerdy teenager or preteen, I think that yes, it's just another example of how our elites, so to speak, are doing all they can to gut the living essence of our institutions and traditions.
Absolutely.
So
we did get a nice comment you should check out, though. John's lawyer has a very good reading voice. We need him for The Stars Entwined. If you want to do audiobooks, let me know.
It is often said that I have a face for radio and a voice for radio. So mostly the face for radio, which is why I don't want the File 770 people to look at me and go, oh my God, he's a gingered, soulless daywalker. You know, I don't look anything like an attorney. So it is what it is. Anyhow.
It seems a strange choice to give so much screen time to my blog's report at the Ned. You know, you're right. And so I disagree. I am a casual fan. I am a longtime fan. And the Nebula Award winners are important to me. And I want to know who the Nebula Award winners are, because I'll go read them. But I think that what I'm going to find out is that, again, it's full of stereotype cliches of a certain political bent and not very good writing. And I'm willing to go and read it with an open mind. But if it's anything like the Hugos, I'm going to be devastated that something that I treasure from my childhood has gone the way of so many other woke product in modern society. Sorry, Mike. Nice point. You're but it's
being
a great
self-aggrandizing.
point. So
I appreciate that.
I decided to
that's my point.
I decided to put up my comic Deus Volt up instead. This has good classic 70s fun. If you love Conan the Barbarian, if you love Prince Valiant, if you love the classics, even John Carter played a little bit of an influence on this. If you love Steve Ditko, John Buscema, just the greats in comics. This is going to be the book for you. Make sure to back it today. This is where the real culture war is at, and this is a pro-Catholic, pro-Christian book at that. So you can be happy that your values will be represented, because representation matters, Peter.
Yes,
representation matters.
Yes, it does. I like that. I recently read The Shadow and watched a couple of the Shadow movies from the 1930s. So it's fun. It's fun, and you don't have to think that you're going to be forced into taking a position on divestment from Israel while you're doing it. So yes, go read those books and just relax from life, etc. Anyhow, I am Peter Bradley. I am an attorney by way of background. For those File 770 readers who think that I got my degree from a box of Cracker Jacks, if in fact they know what Cracker Jacks are, I graduated from UCLA Law School back in 1983 at a time when law professors were still teaching that the First Amendment really, really mattered, and in fact was the preeminent right. One of my professors that I pointed out to you, John, maybe I didn't, maybe I haven't, was Richard Delgado. Richard Delgado turned into one of the leading lights of critical race theory, right, or critical legal studies, and wrote a book on why we don't have to defend Nazis. So he was leading the current movement into kind of a totalitarianism. But I took him for biotechnology in the law because I was a science fiction fan, right? So I would be taking biotechnology in the law, and he gave me, I don't know, a 99 out of 100 in his class, and I thought he was a nice man, and I have no problems with him.
Look at that.
So that's what I am. I do business litigation. I started out doing business litigation, which is contracts and corporations. I tried a shareholder derivative action once. I taught corporations in law school for 3 years. And because I did business litigation, that just led to doing employment law. And I do employment law for plaintiffs, people who are fired from their jobs because of disability, pregnancy, sex, sexual orientation, race, and the rest of that type of thing. I am, in fact, fighting the war against systemic racism with my own money and putting my money where my mouth is. And systemic racism is nonsense, honestly. There's systemic disability. There's systemic anti-pregnancy. There's systemic ageism. But the reality is that those kind of things impose costs on employers, whereas race really doesn't. I mean, an Asian person and a white person are basically equivalent. You pay them both the same. So I don't see that.
So of course, there's nothing like that. But it does sound, systemic racism sounds really nice. When you're given a $40,000 speech to dupe a corporation about like they're having to motivate them for something that's complete nonsense. So
I would like nothing better than to be given a full-time gig teaching people not to discriminate against the disabled or the elderly. By elderly, I mean people over 40. You are so close to aging into another protected class, John Delarose.
Oh, geez.
Just give it another couple of years. Or that type of thing. It seems like a nice racket, but instead they focus on something that, as a practical matter, I never see. I don't see it.
We got a super chat from Nasser. Thank you, Nasser, for the $2 super chat. We appreciate that. Where can I contact Peter for a law question?
Send it to John, and then John will send it to me, because I'm not so foolish as to give out my email address. not for $2 going to John Delarose, anyhow. So
Nasser's a good kid.
So after the employment stuff led to civil rights, and so I do civil rights litigation as well. So all that, and then that led to John Delarose eventually. So I'm going to share something. This is breaking news, Mike Glyer. Pick up your pen and write this down.
Breaking news, everybody.
Breaking news. John Delarose did not go into debt hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees, rendering his victory against the corporation that ran WorldCon 76 a ashen victory. I did it pro bono.
Wow. Look at that.
John Delarose is a decent guy, and
Thank you, Peter.
doing nice things for decent guys makes me feel good. And besides which,
that's very Catholic of you.
That's very well. I guess I'm getting something out of it. I'm getting a few thousand years off of my time in purgatory.
Get some indulgences there. Yeah.
So I may not be the last guy sweeping up there when the rest of you go on. I'll be turning off the lights after everybody else is gone. But maybe it'll be somewhat shorter because they'll say you did this one nice thing. So I did it pro bono, and before people start saying, who how stupid are you? I want to point out that I do pro bono. Last year during the height of the coronavirus, I represented an African American woman who had been terminated from the county of Fresno in front of the Civil Service Commission because it reeked of racial discrimination. There I go. I say there's no systemic racism, and then I go and point out a race case. Well, it does happen, but really, I got her reinstated largely because the Civil Service Commission does not want to touch those kind of cases during the middle of the George Floyd riots.
Definitely not.
With a 20-foot pole. So it all worked out.
In some ways, the system actually worked for her, because of that, right?
Well, sure, because I got to trot out all the left-wing social systemic racism cantrips and start talking about that. So that does tend to poison the will, as we say in the trade. Yeah, or poison the well if you're paying attention. Anyhow.
Wow. George says for $2.25 Canadian, how about 25 cents more? Can I get the lawyers? George, $2.25 Canadian is less than $2 American. You can't pay me in fake money. You can't pay me in your fake Canadian money.
Currency with pictures of ducks don't spend well here in the States. Ducks are loonies. What are loons? Yeah.
Loons, yes. There you go. All right. So for those unfamiliar with the case, I'll do a brief rundown. Things started really right after the election in 2016. I posted myself with a MAGA hat on Facebook at a party for the election, and I was very excited for our wonderful president who won both elections that he was up for, rightfully, even though it's been this current one's giving some trouble at the moment. And I was very excited. And I got nasty emails from my editor, Jennifer Brozek, who works for all these big companies. She's actually an editor who was up for a Hugo Award. She's part of the whole circuit and all that. Got a nasty email from her assistant saying, this is a small community, and your behavior is reflected poorly, and nobody's going to ever invite you to be published again. And I'm like, why are you guys stalking my Facebook for my Trump support? Like, why do you care? Like, why is this like? I don't care who you voted for. And it was a very bizarre thing, but that was my first taste of this. And I saw that going into 2017, I lost my typical speaking gig that I had at BayCon, which is our local science fiction convention. And they just didn't invite me that year. And everybody else I knew got invited. And I'm like, what's going on? I talked to people who are, are on the periphery of the staff. And they said, yeah, there's a political thing. These people, who are in charge right now are very upset with the Trump thing, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay. So I wrote this nice blog post saying, look, science fiction conventions should not be about politics. Science fiction conventions should be about fun books, Star Trek, Star Wars, all the things we love and share in common. It'd be very nice if people could act professional and hang out and share what we love in common rather than actually try to ostracize people over differences. That is what they do, unfortunately. This is what all of our mainstream culture does. They are very hateful people. And it's sad because, true diversity would have different viewpoints, different things, and we'd all be able to share and come together over what we love. That is what diversity and inclusivity is supposed to mean. But it doesn't mean that to these people. You just have to check certain boxes or you're not welcome. And that's what comes down. So File 770, Mike Glier's site, picked it up. And, of course, everybody started trashing me. The head of SIFWA was writing nasty comments about me. Cat Rambo. Kurt Busiek, the Marvel Comics writer, DC Astro City creator, just was writing. A guy I've read since I was a kid was writing nasty comments about me. John Scalzi was writing nasty comments about me. Lots. Jim Pines. All these people from this whole realm just started just being completely gross to me, and it just kept escalating and escalating. At the same time, I made another blog post about how comics were getting ruined by SJWs, and that got picked up. I then got to the Federalist with that, where that actually boosted me into a pretty big career from them. But a lot of comic people then started trashing me on that side of the industry also, because they're like, oh, this is terrible. You're not allowed to point out what's going on is what is happening. So I pointed out how the sales were down and Marvel is suffering because of Marvel's systematic replacement characters trying to be woke. And so those two things picked up speed. I started getting death threats all the time. Nasty. I got a weird package sent to my house. Terrible things started happening. I saw Richard C. Meyer got kind of bigger at that point, Diversity in Comics. And then people were threatening him at a convention, which is the New York Comic Con. And I was going to bring a bunch of conservative authors to WorldCon in 2018 because it's right by my house. I could host people at my house. And I saw that. And a bunch of my conservative author friends who were going to come were like, we're going to back out because the environment doesn't feel safe. And so I email WorldCon at the time, and I say, hey, I'm getting death threats. I've seen other conservatives being harassed at conventions and threatened. My friends don't feel safe here. Will you provide us some protection? What kind of security measures do you have? Can you help us so I can assuage these people's fears and my own fears? And unfortunately, they never responded, Peter. I don't know why. I can't imagine if I was a transgender lesbian black woman, and I wrote that email, it would have been all over. They would have been bending over backwards.
Let me step in here now and say that's not speculation. That was the testimony of Kevin Roche in his deposition.
Correct.
I asked Mr. Roche, if John had written a letter like this, or if a transgender had written a letter like this, would you have responded to it? And he says, absolutely. It would have been sent on to the people who handle that kind of thing. And I said, but you didn't send it on to with John. And he goes, yes. Why not? Because it was nonsense. Apparently, there was never any in his neck of the woods riots against Trump supporters where Trump supporters were being egged, or people with MAGA hats being attacked, or that type of thing. That's just nonsense. And why? Because Jerry Pournelle and Larry Niven were never harassed in his experience. Legends of the Field were never harassed, and therefore we don't have to worry about John Della Rose, whose only claim to fame is a winsome smile and a befuddled look.
Okay, that's true. But it's amazing that he said that under deposition. I listened to this and I'm like, holy crap! This guy just admitted that they will discriminate against you based on who you are and what your identity is. And they will take different actions, not based on the merits of what's going on, but based on who you are. And
by the way, that is clearly illegal because it's discrimination.
Right. Correct.
It's discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or sexual identity. I mean, they don't have a clue. I mean, sadly, one of the things that we've lost is this idea of neutrality. And we've gone into this, and I hate to say it, but this kind of Marxist attitude where only the oppressed have rights, and the oppressed are whoever we define as being oppressed. So, anyhow, it's been an eye opener to watch how this works. Go ahead.
It's shocking. So 2017 keeps rolling along. I didn't get that. I decided I'm going to go to WorldCon anyway, and I figure, you know what? I mean, worst case, I will bring a friend as a bodyguard or something like that. And I'll get like a GoPro on me as a body cam, so that if somebody comes and tries to stab me or something, then it'll be on footage, right? And I checked their code of conduct at the time on this, and their code of conduct said that recordings are permitted in common areas. And so I'm like, okay, this is great. So there was no problem there with doing that. So I posted that quickly. A lot of people threw a fit about that, and I was like, "What? Why are people throwing a fit about this?" Like, the problem is like nobody's responding to me, and I can't, and they're not giving me any assurances that security will do anything for me. And I was also going to bring my wonderful transgender friend Aaron Sith as my bodyguard. So that was nice. I feel much more comfortable if I have a tranny protecting me at WorldCon. I'm not going to lie.
Well, who wouldn't?
Who wouldn't, right? So and Aaron's pretty rough and tumble. She could kick my ass 100%, and she could kick anybody's ass in this chat. I would guarantee you. So don't mess with Aaron. Very, very sweet lady. So at the same time.
And she's a very nice person too,
yes,
by the way. I had to speak to her.
Yeah. There you go. So so that was going to be my plan, to have a bodyguard, to have to have any sort of a camera on me in case somebody attacked me. And then at the same time, I qualified for the Science Fiction Writers of America. And since I duly qualified, I was very excited as an author. And this is my first time I qualified. I was going to be able to be an active member and join the group that has the Nebula Awards. Is actually this is like a nice little resume piece that you can join SIFWA, because it's very difficult to get to that point. And so I was excited to join that. I was telling people there, I look forward to hanging out with you at the con suite, because if they have a little party con suite like a lot of groups do. And then I applied, and I applied to that, and I bought my ticket to WorldCon. Well, sure enough, there was a backroom chat in this group called Codex Writers, and they started going off. They banned me earlier in the year because I said I was friends with Vox Day. So remember, if you're friends with somebody, you get banned from stuff. But they started going off on me, and SIFWA officers, like actual people who were on the board, were going off on how there's no way they could let me attend WorldCon. They're going to start emailing WorldCon and telling them that I'm a horrible person, that I'm going to do all these things. And they coordinated on that message board this hate campaign against me. Now, I also saw that Mike Glyer made a couple posts similar in the comments on File 770 that was encouraging this behavior at the time. I emailed that to Mike, and I said, that's really not right of you to do that. But on his gossip blog there, he likes to amplify these sorts of things for clicks. And so it's really sad to watch him actually give into this and actually encourage these people in their derangement, which, honestly is just trying to destroy me because I'm not the correct identity, right? At the end of the day. So at the same time, so I got a double whammy. SIFWA declined my application, and they said it was because Cat Rambo didn't like me, basically. And then right after that, I got this WorldCon banning, where they posted it up everywhere, saying that I was intending on violating their code of conduct, and that removing me from the convention was going to remove, quote, racist bullying from their convention. So I'm out here, and everybody now, of course, all the usual suspects from File 770 are going crazy. John Scalzi's going crazy. Cat Rambo's going crazy. All these people are just making nasty, nasty personal attacks on me immediately. And so it just they really harmed my reputation in the industry, all because they can't handle it. It really stems from they couldn't handle how they know I voted in 2016. And that's just disgusting. I can't believe people would act like that at all. And that's what ended up making the case, because what happened when I saw that, I was freaked out. I could not believe they'd do this. At that point, Peter got in contact with me through a mutual friend. And Jason Rennie, who used to run Superversive Press, if you guys know.
Who's a real nice guy, too.
He's a real nice guy, too.
And also recently converted to Catholicism.
He did. It's amazing. I think all the nice people are converting to Catholicism, but that's a different stream. So, that's that. That's and then we got in touch about this, and it was clear defamation from minute one. It seemed a pretty open and shut case from that point. But you also had a couple statutes from California, which I still believe they're in violation of, just based on what we know. And we're going to pursue those too.
Well, we're not, because we settled the case.
We're not now.
We're not now, but we were going to. So let me step in here and say one of the things that interested me is that is the Unruh Act. You have all of these businesses and business establishments like WorldCon, which falls under the heading of WorldCon, who are engaging in discrimination against people because of their political affiliation. The Unruh Act in California, California Civil Code Section 51, if you're paying attention, write that down, Mike Meyer, forbids arbitrary discrimination by by business establishments, public establishments. It's the same concept that Clarence Thomas suggested that lawyers use against Twitter and Facebook when they arbitrarily ban one part of a discussion but not another. I filed 5 causes of action. 4 of them were based on the Unruh Act, and one was a defamation case because they said that John Delarose had been banned because he was going to violate the code of conduct. They believe in inclusion, and they will not tolerate racist and bullying behavior. So the clear implication is that he was going to go and racially harass people. Now, I want to say the following. We took the deposition of the 2 people involved. They had not a scintilla or shred of evidence and acknowledged that there was no evidence that John was racist. Kevin Roche, God bless him, could not definitely say that he thought John Delarose was racist. He just had concerns about some things that John had written. And they had no evidence of that whatsoever. When it all came down, when push came to shove, their explanation for the violation of the code of conduct was that they were afraid he was going to trespass into the Sifwa suite, and secretly record conversations. So I asked Kevin Roche, did you think he was going to violate the law? Oh, he couldn't say that. Do you have any evidence that John Delarose would commit trespass? No. Don't you think that's speculation? Yeah, that's speculation. And likewise, he had no idea here's the thing. In these kind of cases, when you show pretext, you ask some simple questions. One is, did you ever contact the other person and ask them what they intended to do? And they never did that. It would have been that simple.
I'm always
call
a super
John
nice
up
person
and ask him, what are you intending to do? And by the way, you understand that you're not allowed to enter into suites where they don't want you.
Right.
And John would have said,
I got to clarify here. When I got this, I emailed Kevin directly, and I gave him my phone number. I said, look, there's been some misunderstandings here. Please call me. Let's work this out. And that's what I do every time. Anytime I have a conflict with anybody, I always know, like, I'm in business. In the business world, you would never let these rumors and all this stuff go like this. You'd always just talk to a person. You'd resolve things, and then just try to do the right thing at the end of the day. I couldn't imagine another business acting like this, or professionals acting like this.
John acted entirely reasonably.
I did.
I've represented hundreds of witnesses, and some act reasonably and some don't act reasonably. What John did was totally reasonable. He acted exactly the way you would expect a mature business person to engage in. On the other hand, SFSSC, let's call it WorldCon, were acting like petulant children, in my opinion, because they didn't reach out and ask and engage in some kind of communication. It was that simple. And if I had been in front of a jury, I would have pointed that out, and that's the kind of thing that gets juries angry. So anyhow, on the Unruh Act,
hold on. I got more on this topic. So I've done this, and this is, by the way, I mean, we all know, a lot of the comic people know that Ethan Van Sciver and I had some fights in the past, and we talked it out, and that's how we resolved it. That's why we're both mature adults, and why we're both able to do things like this, and that's why I love Ethan. That's why we're friends now. You can resolve conflicts this way. This is the only way you can't. Is when you got weird SJWs and people who just can't act like regular human beings. And I have put out another email, and I just want everybody to know this. They're for SFWA, the Science Fiction Writers of America, because they've engaged in discriminatory practices quite a bit also. And I have their president, Mary Robinette Kowal's email. And I sent her a very nice message saying, hey, I think you guys are in violation of several California statutes in terms of discrimination. I would like to resolve this and make sure that you guys don't have any problems. Please give me a call. And I gave her my phone number. So, Mary, if you are watching this stream, or if any of your friends are watching this stream, please just call me and let's actually talk like adults and let's actually do this, because I don't want to, it's really sad to me when you can't, but I want to be a member of SIFWA. And I deserve to be a member of SIFWA as a person who has, just on this campaign, Dave's Vote right here, this qualifies me for SIFWA by itself. I don't even need anything else. I would like all this stuff retracted that they were trying to push on me too, because it was born off of the same discriminatory practices. And I really think that'd be easy to resolve as adults and we can move forward. And I would love to be an active, positive member of the community. So continue, Peter.
Yeah. Hey, John, can you put? I've got my Nitro Pro PDF reader up. Can you? Oh, yes. Can you put this up? I just want to show people. Okay, here we are.
You might have to zoom in a little to show people because it's a little small.
Oh, look at that! It's like real. Yeah. It's like magic. Is that better? Is this better?
A little bigger even.
Okay. So for all the people who was wondering what I was doing, this is a site. This is a case that came down in 2005. And someday I'll get to the beginning of it, and it is called, wow, it's way up there. That's embarrassing. Ingalls versus Westwood One Broadcasting Services, Inc. And so lawyers, we read cases, we see how cases were decided, and we read the language of cases, and we try to figure out what's going, how law statutes apply. Well, in this particular one, the court quoted a California Supreme Court decision, the Marina Point decision, which says, I'm going to read it. In the summary holding preceding the discussion of the facts, the opinion states whether the exclusionary policy rests on the alleged undesirable propensities of those of a particular race, nationality, occupation, political affiliation, or age in this context. The Unruh Act protects individuals from such arbitrary discriminations. And John Delarose was arbitrarily discriminated against because of political affiliation. The problem was that the judge in Santa Clara decided that there had been some evolution of the law, and that really we could no longer rely on what not only the California Supreme Court said, but also this Court of Appeal decision said. Now, I think that was inappropriate. I was more than happy to take this up because I think California could use a holding that says you don't get to discriminate against people because they're Republicans or they're Democrats or they vote for Trump. And frankly, if that holding was made, I think the temperature would drop politically. I think people would be a lot more polite. They would start getting along with each other because they would realize that actions have consequences. So John wouldn't have been banned, that they would have had to learn how to tolerate a different viewpoint, and they'd have to learn to get along with other people in exactly the same way that we conservatives have learned to get along with people on the left.
Right.
Why is that? Because we go to their colleges and we go to their universities and we are exposed to their media. It is simply the case that conservatives learn tolerance earlier and better. That's why study after study that has been done show that left-wingers will ban people on Facebook at an astronomically high rate compared to every other political orientation. We've learned how to tolerate people. They've never had to. When I was at UCLA, I was one of 2 conservatives on the entire campus. I had to learn how to deal with them. They never had to learn how to deal with me. Anyhow, I do want to go on to something. So what happened then is we ended up with a defamation cause of action. And the defamation cause of action could not have been clearer. Again, Mike Glyer, your people were you were actually getting close. You realize that 2 judges had said the same thing and that and had indicated that the law was that there was defamation. In fact, today, weirdly enough, we were going to have a settlement conference on Wednesday, and I got a call from the mediator, And it was going to be by Zoom. I didn't realize that, but I talked to the guy who was going to do the mediation. He was going to try to do the settlement. And I said, here's what happened, and here's how it settled out. And he said, just between you and me, I really think there was defamation there.
Yeah, it's pretty
everybody
obvious.
With experience, everybody with experience knew that calling somebody a racist in a specific context is defamation, unless, of course, that person was a racist, in which case you better be able to pull out something that validates that claim. Otherwise, we call it what, John De La Rose?
Defamation?
Defamation is the correct
Libel?
answer. We would accept that answer.
So what about this from Nunya Business here? Her at Mary Sue says, she's an angry, yelly soccer fan and socialist. She, her, Mexican ex, bi. Says, why do I have a yelly email from WorldCon 76 telling me John De La Rose, can't even spell my name right, is not a racist? FYI, John De La Rose is a goddamn racist, and he can kiss my bountiful beige behind. Is that defamation?
Well, okay, so in that particular case, it's not a it's hyperbole. I'd call that
that's hyperbole.
Okay, so I was reading stuff. Larry Correia called Mike Glyer a scumbag. Okay, correct. In 2 posts. That wouldn't be defamation. It may not be a nice thing to say, and it might hurt Mike's feelings. But scumbag is not quantifiable. It's not. It's how do we prove or disprove that Mike Glyer has the quality of scumbaggedness? Okay,
my people wanted a close up here, so of this.
Okay, well, guys, I'm reading that she's single, so go to work. Okay, so
she they.
Hey, it's not foreclosed. It's open. It's possible. So anyhow, so going back to the thing, but if Larry Correia had said something like Mike Glyer embezzles money and therefore he's a scumbag, then that entire statement, which is hypothetical, and I'm just using it as a hypothetical, would be defamatory because you're explaining what scumbag means in that context, and you're saying this action happened and it's true. And in their case, they were saying you were a racist, and that's why and you were going to violate the code of conduct in a racist way. And so they were being very specific, at which point in time, all lawyers know, as I'm trying to point out, 2 judges, me and the mediator, all know you've walked well into the area of defamation. Hey, there's another thing I want to do. The File 770 people were doing this horse laugh. Oh, it must have really hurt John De La Rose to admit he was not a public figure. What they don't know what public figure means. It means
that was the other big thing. They kept doing this over and over again.
It's so dumb. You have this amazing combination of arrogance and ignorance that you can. It makes me realize why when I was a kid in high school, people like me were always getting the swirlies and Melvin. It's because you have no sense of audience. You have no sense of your own limitations. Okay, so here it is.
I want to give a quick shout out to Richard Fox, #1.
Richard Fox is a great guy too. I like Richard Fox.
#1 best-selling author of the Ember War series. This is one of the best writers in science fiction today. He just came out with a book that's co-written with David Weber. And it's awesome. I'm so excited. Congratulations on that, Richard.
I should run out and get that book. Deal. We all should.
Yeah, we all should run out and get that book immediately. All right.
So public figure. Public figures are people with such fame that they can actually influence other people, significant numbers of other people. So the Kardashians, God help us, would be public figures. On the other hand, people who are actually famous, who are authors, but don't have that level of clout. Let's say Stephen King would probably qualify as a public figure because he's in commercials and he's movies and everything like that. Other people, Dean Koontz. I like Dean Koontz a lot. I think he's pretty famous. Probably don't qualify as a public figure. Even Dean Koontz.
So would Richard Fox working with David Weber does not make you a public figure? Correct.
Probably David Weber, isn't it? Who knows David Weber? I mean, you have to start defining the community really narrowly in order to make David Weber. I mean, I know who he is. vaguely. I mean, I would have said in science fiction it would be people like Isaac Asimov, Robert Heinlein, Arthur C. Clarke, Theodore Sturgeon, maybe. But John Delarose, you are not. So I met Ray Bradbury. Ray Bradbury impressed me. He shook my hand.
Wow.
John Delarose, you are no Ray Bradbury.
Oh,
maybe terrible. Someday. Maybe someday.
You're removed from my stream.
I know. Yeah. How dare I say that? So that was one thing that just was totally misunderstood. Another one. I want to talk about the settlement here. Okay. So you got an apology. Yeah. And also I want to pull up this so people can see it. Okay, so why did we settle for $4,000? Okay, there is the reason right here. Do I have to make it bigger? Is that going to help?
Hold on. I do have a super chat. Please don't show us that beast again. Please remove it from the screen. I might have to pull these things up just because I'm getting super chats to remove it. That's pretty great.
What beast? Oh, that beast.
Our friend. What was her name? Nunya Business. Yes. Thanks, Great Learner.
All right, so you're getting money for here. Look at this.
I can put up Rosetta, guys, if you really want it. So
here's the thing. Science fiction. San Francisco Science Fiction Conventions Inc. exists to put on conventions. Okay, it's not a profit-making business. I don't know that it's a non-profit. Maybe it is. But it doesn't make a profit. It's a hobby, okay? And so it's not the kind of business that has bank accounts that they put in and they pay dividends out to shareholders and whatever. So I'm sure they get money in from membership fees and they pay it out to the rental place and volunteers maybe they take something for themselves for their time and effort. More power.
What he's saying, and long story short, chat, is that they're poor. Okay.
Continue. They got okay, and in fact, that's what the attorney told me. We have no money. At one point in the settlement negotiations, they offered you two memberships
to the current WorldCon
convention.
I was like, okay.
Okay, so what do businesses usually do? You're a businessman, John. Have you heard the term insurance?
Yes.
Yes.
So that's where we went with this originally. We thought, well, a defamation case like this could be honestly worth 50, 100, 200,000. I mean, it could easily go in there or even higher.
Let me show you this. I want to show you this.
Here we go.
This is the Lola O'Brien case that I did.
Make this bigger so people can read it a little better.
So people can read it. This is the Lola O'Brien case, and this was a sign language interpreter who was fired from the CDCR basically for disability discrimination, and we tried it in front of a jury in Madeira, and we got damages for the firing for the earnings that she lost, about $1.1 million. And then we got defamation damages, harm to trade, profession, or occupation. She's a sign language interpreter. She got $130,000. Her reputation, $200,000. Shame, mortification, or hurt feelings. So we got a total of $444,000 for defamation.
Right.
Defamation cases are explosive. Because they piss people off when we've all been defamed. We all know what that's like. And when you start going, wait, you called this guy a racist and you'd never even thought he was racist?
Right.
Forget you. And we all understand in this day and age how toxic the accusation of racism, an accusation of racism can have you lose your job and lose your business. And we all know that. And so for these people then to come out and say, oh, it's just a matter of opinion, it really doesn't mean anything, is about as disgraceful an argument as you can possibly make. Anyhow, so what you do if you're in a business like this is you get insurance. And most insurance will have some coverage for defamation. Your comprehensive general liability insurance is the most common kind. If you look at it, it will have defamation coverage. I picked up defenses for my clients on a number of times on defamation. Your homeowner's insurance policy probably has defamation in it. Your umbrella and your excess coverage.
JDA called me a jerk. Can I sue? Testify.
Truth is always a defense, as we say.
Testify. You are a jerk. You are a jerk. Testify. That's the problem.
Here's a nickel. Call someone who cares. Okay, so I'm sorry, Testify. You probably are a wonderful person, and you didn't deserve that.
No. He totally does. Okay.
So
totally
so in any event, in litigation, you send out interrogatories and you ask, well, tell me about your insurance. Well, this is their response. I said, do you have any insurance that covers this? No. So I assumed they had some kind of insurance, but I have no idea whatsoever what they got. I mean, the File 770 folk will call everyone else idiots and morons, and they would do everything better than anybody else would possibly do. You have to wonder why a business that runs conventions wouldn't get insurance that would cover advertising issues, since you're advertising,
right.
Or defamation, since people since they have a social media presence.
Right.
I mean, it's not that difficult. So somebody, I believe, in my humble opinion, screwed up somewhere. But that's not my lookout at all. So what happened was there's no insurance here. And what that meant then is, insurance, what insurance does is it does two things. Sometimes it covers the loss, but mostly it pays for the defense. So if you get insurance, if you have insurance, any kind of insurance, the insurance company starts paying for your lawyers. And what happens then is you stop caring about the case because it's not coming out of your pocket. Okay. So, and the insurance attorneys like to bill. They get paid by the insurance company, so they're going to bill away. And what this meant is that the corporation, and probably through its directors, some or all of them, or one or two, or we don't know, was paying the defense costs, the attorney's fees, their own attorney's fees. Remember, I was pro bono. Were paying their own attorney's fees because this is the firm they hired, put 2 lawyers and a paralegal on this case, and they're a big downtown San Jose firm with offices in 6 or 7 cities across the United States.
Well, this isn't just somebody who happens to like the defendants.
Yeah, they're not doing it pro bono.
No.
At the end of the day, the attorneys who are doing this have to explain what have they been spending their time on. And I just don't, I could see pro bono being for impoverished or, lower income people, but not for, a corporation that does science fiction conventions. So it was coming out of somebody's pocket, and I always get outbilled 2 or 3 to 1. So they were probably...
Pause this real quick and let everybody know that Dave's Volt is still available on Indiegogo. I am actually wrapping up. I had a couple corrections to make to the letterer, and I'm going to be getting the files for the digital out like today or tomorrow, depending on how long we go with stuff like this. So back it today. If you want to support the channel and everything we do, definitely read Dave's Volt. It's going to be my best comic yet, 100%. We'll see you guys. All right. You're up.
So I'm gonna get to this. So they were probably paying $50,000 to $100,000 in attorney's fees. So everything they said about you is true of them, which is your typical left-wing projection of accusation kind of situation.
And we got a super chat. You got to learn how to YouTube here. So Risey,
why are they flipping us off?
That's just his avatar there. Okay, the Risey has the is that like the caution sign? It's kind of like a Testify. It looks a little like Testify's deal. I think that's what he's trying to do. So hi Risey, my good friend the Risey. He's a good guy. All right.
Okay. And so then we get down to settlement. Now, what would have happened if they had insurance is that you would probably we would have been talking in the 6-figure range. Okay. But they would have probably insisted on a confidentiality provision. Most of my settlements are confidential, with a non-disclosure agreement, and there wouldn't have been no apology because the defendant doesn't care anymore. They're being paid for by an insurance company, and they have no skin in the game. the insurance company will probably pay off the defamation claim.
Right.
This operation was judgment proof, so there was never going to be any collection against it. And so all we could negotiate for was an apology. And then they were trying to get you to take no money. They said, we have no money. They wanted you to take a couple of memberships. And then I finally said, forget it, and they finally offered $4,000, which covers all the costs you had in this case. Yay. The deposition costs, the filing fees, and the rest of that type of thing. So, ladies and gentlemen, and Mike Lauer, pick up your pen and write this down. John Della Rose was not out of pocket in any way on this case.
Yay!
And he got an apology. That's the other thing. The other thing is that they're going, well, it's not much of an apology, blah, blah, blah.
We'll get to that in a second. Okay. We'll get to that in a second. Robert Roberts, thank you for the $5 Canadian super chat, even though it's fake money. How much to commission the sequel to Deus Vult, John Della Rose's Deus Xenu? I'm not a heretic, so it's not going to happen. That's all. Peter?
Oh, I'm here. I mean, was there a question? I was just trying to interpret the whole Deus Xenu thing,
Yeah.
So somehow you're Catholic by way of Scientology. By the way, L. Ron Hubbard, what a cool dude. He said he was going to create a fraudulent religion, and he did.
And he went for it. What a great guy.
What a great guy.
As long as you're following through with your passions and your dreams, everybody, you too can be L. Ron Hubbard.
He was totally upfront about it too.
He was. That was the lesson from last night too. Logan Paul just said, "Hey, Floyd Mayweather, greatest boxer of all time, come fight me," and he made it happen. And then he got paid like $20 million for that, even though he's just some dumb YouTuber. So you can follow your dreams and do all this too, and you can get apologies from WorldCon too if you follow your dreams.
All right, so where is my? Absolutely, I was trying to find. Is this it? No, that's not it. Anyhow, so what I wanted to point out was at one point they were trying to get you to apologize for the protest on pedophilia out there.
Oh, that's pretty funny. Yeah,
and they wanted, what they basically were trying to do was have some kind of what we call a two-coke.
Let me read that. Let me read that aloud there, because I'm going to do it in my soy voice real quick. So they wanted in the draft of the apology originally, they wanted me to say this.
Okay,
come on, Boomer, quick,
right here.
Make it a little bigger.
Yeah. Wait, okay, Gen X or Gen Z or whatever the hell you are. Your eyes haven't attenuated yet.
I'm a proud millennial. All right. So I'll read this. So they wanted me to put this in there. Oh my gosh! Now it's on. Okay. Yes, there. Okay. Jonathan Della Rose acknowledges SFSFC, WorldCon 76, and their personnel do not support pedophilia in any way, and regrets any implication otherwise by his words or action. There you go.
Yeah,
that's what they wanted me to put in there.
That
didn't end up in there. So people, this was the draft. We of course said, hell no, we're not.
So I want to.
This is you apologizing to me.
I want to read what I said. I told them if FSC wants to plead bankruptcy, then it should file bankruptcy. If we get a judgment, we'll execute on the trademark and the other assets. So you would have been the proud owner of the San Francisco Science Fiction Convention.
When I saw that, I was like, "Ooh, we should keep going with this because that sounds fun."
Going exactly. And then I said, so I will be clear. Mr. Della Rose will not say anything about pedophilia. Frankly, he has no idea whether SFSC's personnel support pedophilia. I mean, you don't. I mean,
I have no idea.
We'd like to think they don't, but can you really say with a under oath that that nobody in SFC supports pedophilia? I wish we could. I really wish we could.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that they do or they would, but you can't affirm things you don't know.
Can't warrant that. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And then I said, more importantly, that issue is not part of this case and will never be a part of any judgment. SFSC's only interest in this provision is obviously so it can claim some kind of tu quoque, but there is no tu quoque in this case. This is not negotiable. Okay, for you millennial / Gen Z people, tu quoque means whataboutism. So well, we said this on our social media site, but then he had led a protest against pedophilia, so they're the same thing. Well, no, they're not the same thing. Okay, and here's another thing I want to say. You know, I went back and I looked at something that Moira Grayland interview she gave when this thing first started, and her mother was Marion Zimmer Bradley, and her father was Walter Breen. And I liked Marion Zimmer Bradley stories, the Hester stories, when I was a teenager. Little did I know they were actually trying to groom me. But but she went through hell. Those people were horrible, horrible parents, and they were pedophiles, or at least Walter Breen was. And Walter Breen got a ban of 1 day. And then the convention decided that that was too much, and they should let Walter Breen walk among the children of the convention back in the 60s. Well, for Moira Grayland, this is not academic. This was reality. She was being molested by her father, and I don't know about her mother, but that was going on. And
yes,
we now live in a world where the left constantly wants to hold everyone else accountable for every sin that has happened in the last 200 years. But they apparently don't think they need to be held accountable for supporting a pedophile back in the 1960s. And the victim is still alive today and suffering because
that's why that was one of the reasons SIF was stated that they wouldn't accept me into their little club or whatever.
That's shameful. That is
because Cat Rambo went on Twitter and was going off on Moira Grayland and saying, this is something that happened 30 years ago, and we don't need to pay any attention to it. She's just trying to get attention, something like that. And I said, that's disgusting. And why would you defend a pedophilic act from a lady who's clearly hurt? This lady's hurting, right? Her life is ruined even to this day. And why would you go out there and just poo-poo that and defend that? That's disgusting.
Yeah. And so nobody makes that argument when it's a Catholic priest and it's a case from 40 or 50 years ago. Moira Grayland is a human being. She's entitled to respect and dignity, and she suffered because of it. And for somebody to say that that's not important is about as disgusting as I can imagine.
They use that as justification to ban me because I said that's disgusting that somebody would do that, and it is disgusting.
I think you had a fair point. Moira Grayland's book was live about that time, and we're holding people accountable. So why is it so hard for WorldCon 76, let's say, to issue a statement like it did for every other victim group?
Yes.
Why is it that victims of pedophiles are somehow not to be anyhow? So the bottom line was that this Takoke, this whataboutism, was just not going to happen, and that was a hill to die on, and we would have gone forward with the case, and then probably, and let me say what I think. If we had gone forward with the case, let's be clear about this. They on file 770 again was very educational to tell me what kind of stupid arguments I needed to anticipate. And let me say, they would never have been able to introduce any of the emails or the things you posted because they had nothing to do with racist bullying. You don't get to just simply go, we're going to trash this guy's reputation with stuff that is a slumgullion, a melange of statements that have no relationship to the defamation. And so there would have been a motion in limine, and the court would have said, I don't want to waste my time with that nonsense. And they would never have come in unless it was specifically related to racism, and there was none. There would have been no evidence to support their claim. Bottom line. And we would have gone and we would have put on the evidence, and the judgment could easily have been in the six figures. but then it would have been non-collectible, and so nothing would really have changed.
Right.
So
remember, they don't have the money, guys. These are poor people. Again, there's nothing we can do.
Well, I like Vox Day's point that they basically handed you their entire treasury. I think that pretty much is accurate.
That is accurate.
Yeah. So it's like the widow's pence. It may not be a lot, but it's all they got. The widow's mite. I'm sorry. The widow's mite.
We got a very interesting super chat here. I stopped going to Delaware Comic-Con years ago because I saw adults messing with kids. Sadly, this is everywhere in sci-fi these days. Keep fighting. Yeah, I've seen too many instances of this around. Also, there's a lot of creepy stuff out there. And
is that true?
Yeah, this is Matthew's testimony on this. So yeah,
okay,
I trust him. So
I mean that's shocking.
There's a lot of weird stuff. There's a lot of weird stuff out there. Keep your kids safe. Number one, that's the most important thing.
Yeah. That's right. At some point. Well, they're certainly keeping everything fixated on non-existent fears while ignoring.
Did you see the Pride episode of Blue's Clues they put this weekend? They're trying. Did you see that whole deal?
I saw squibs of it last week, and I'm back in the 1980s and 1990s.
This is nuts to me.
They would talk about grooming. Well, the homosexuals are trying to groom. And of course, the response was, well, no, that's ridiculous. Don't be ridiculous. But you have to look at what you're putting on the screen here and wonder, how is this not grooming?
They're attempting to get these kids into this lifestyle. And these are, Blue's Clues is a show for like 2, 3, 4-year-olds. We're not talking like high school even. We're talking 2, 3, 4-year-olds.
Grooming.
Can you imagine that?
Total grooming. Well, again, one of the interesting things in Kevin Roche's deposition is that they were trying to reach out beyond the natural sphere of people who would attend a WorldCon. So Kevin Roche testified that one of his ideas for reaching out was to hire drag queens or employ drag queens or something with drag queens to get the message out, to get people to come to WorldCon. And number one, you go, okay, well, his explanation was fair. Well, people who do cosplay might be interested in there, so there is kind of a silver thread that runs there. However, there are more people with families than there are people who are transsexual or transvestite or whatever. So if you're trying to market yourself to a small sliver of the population, you're going to run through that a lot quicker than if you are marketing yourself to families, who by definition are having children, who grow up and have more children, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a very strange, counterproductive world we live in right now.
It is, and it shocks me. I mean, you've got a quote journalist here, Mary Colossi, saying this is an adorable, wonderful thing. Look at her. I mean, this is crazy. I mean, I can't believe
drag queens.
Yeah, I can't believe anybody would go, this is an okay thing, but that's where we're at now. So
well, it also means my kids watched Blue's Clues when they were 2 or 3, and I liked it, and frankly, it's dead to me now.
Yeah.
Because I don't really want my 2 or 3-year-old. Why should they be exposed to that at that age?
There's no reason. The only reason is to try to get them into these weird sexual situations and thinking about that as children, and that's disgusting and should never be tolerated in any society. Hands down.
Let's let children be children.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyhow, so there's that. I also wanted to say the following for myself because of the File 770 thing. They had a laugh at me because one of my exhibits was rejected. I'm incompetent. Oh my gosh!
Yeah, they kept saying that over and over. These legal scholars, File 770. Yes.
Yeah, there's nothing better than practicing law for 43 years, winning multi-million-dollar verdicts repeatedly, and then have a bunch of yahoos who, for all I know, have a occupational skill that involves saying, "Do you want fries with that?" Criticize me. Okay, so what happened there was that when you do an opposition to a motion for summary judgment, you're writing about 120 pages, and all told, and then you end up with a big pile of paper, maybe 4 or 5 inches thick. And so I got done with it a day ahead of time before it was due. So I filed it. One of the exhibits were more than the 35 megs that they would take. So I simply broke up the declaration with the exhibits and just numbered them with a bait stamp. That's the way you do it in the Court of Appeals.
Correct.
So I did what I did for the Court of Appeals, and I filed it. And then the court said, no, we won't take it the way the Court of Appeals will take it. We want you to put a cover page on each section. So I did, and I filed it again. But it was clear evidence that I was totally screwed up, and I should spend more time learning the basics of the career of the profession rather than spending time on words like slumgullion. I mean, these people are just freaking nuts. And then they were like going, they were going, like I said, poison the will. I had a typo, and that was just the worst thing imaginable, because I said poison the will, not poison the well. Well, it's a cliche. So we all know what it meant.
Do we want to get to the salty comments on the File 770 blog? I mean, I think that's kind of fun stuff.
I'd like to do that. I'd like to do that because it's so. Yeah.
Are you mostly done with the exhibits, or
I'm done.
I think people are actually interested in this, but yeah.
In what? Which? What?
in your legal expertise. It seems like people are enjoying it. So, yeah.
How can you tell? Clairvoyance?
How can I tell? The chat numbers have been going steadily up. So that's how I can tell.
Okay. Yeah. Well. All right. Okay. So. Okay. Yeah. Well. Yeah. Okay. So
regardless, the takeaway, guys, they apologized. They didn't have any money. We got as much money as they had, and
an apology.
An apology, and we win. So, haha.
And I want to say the following again. Getting an apology is incredibly difficult. Okay. Yes. This is probably the only apology I've seen in my 43 years. 43 years? Whatever.
Most settlements, though, you guys remember the Richard C. Meyer case, which got so much attention, because it was what was his deal? Tortious interference. He raised hundreds of thousands of dollars on GoFundMe and all that. It was all over everything all the time. And he settled, and nothing came out of it. They had a non-disclosure clause, so he couldn't even really talk about it. So there was no apology there. There was nothing done there. Maybe he got some money, maybe he didn't. We don't know what occurred with that. But that's typically how cases go, is you just don't know, and it gets buried. So having this out here is the biggest moral victory, which is all we care about, because we want to change the culture. That's the entire purpose of this exercise.
And that is exactly right. It wouldn't have been worth doing. Look, kicking people in the nuts by way of attorney's fees and damages is good. Don't get me wrong. Oftentimes in my cases, I'll get some money in, but I know that they spent 3 times that much defending it. So I know that a discriminatory policy is going to get changed, because they'll say, that was such a bad trip, let's never do it again. And in this particular case, if these people did have to pay the kind of fees that I'm talking about, they aren't going to defame anybody again. In fact, let me say the following. This thing was so stupid because no business airs out its membership issues in public. In fact, that's an invasion of privacy. For example, they used to have cases where people would get bad checks. Remember checks? You'd pieces of paper, and then you'd write on them, and then they might not be okay. So, what would happen is some business would put, this guy gave me a bad check. Well, they would get sued for invasion of privacy, because that's between you and the person. It's not a matter for you to share with the world. Okay, the world had no reason to know that you were banned. The world had no reason to know why you were banned. No well-run business would have done this. No sane, sensible businessman would have done this, because they know that membership is a private matter. But these people thought it was a great idea to put it out for the world. that is so incredibly stupid and unprofessional by itself. So if they have one takeaway, Mike Lyer, pick up your pen and write this down. Don't disclose your membership issues. It's private. If John was just banned, period, paragraph, he wouldn't have had a case, but more importantly, he wouldn't have suffered the damage that SFSFC intended to inflict on him. What SFSFC was clearly doing was trying to poison the well against John Delarose by telling the world he's a bad guy, he's a racist. You guys should they were trying to organize a boycott to ostracize John Delarose, and that isn't how we do things in this country. And so, yes, they apologized, and they spent a lot of money for the privilege of being able to apologize. Okay, I'm done with my little rant.
That's a good rant, and I 100% agree with that. What do we do? What's our recourse, and what can we do about? I mean, because this stems back again to the only reason WorldCon acted like this is because of like commenters on Mike Lyer's blog going nuts about me for a year for no reason, and for people who are on the board in SIFWA conspiring in a backroom chat room or message board to make this happen. So
we have to have
how do we stop that kind of thing?
We have to break up we have to break up the echo chamber. We have to have calmer heads prevail. I mean, one of the things that and part of that is the only way that's going to work is if they think they have skin in the game. I mean, I'm going to take a sideways slant here. One of the other things that I do is I represent small churches in leaving their denominations, their Protestant denominations. The Protestant denominations have become moved to the left, and on social issues, sexuality, and religion. Okay, and a lot of parishes, churches remain Bible believing Orthodox Christian. Okay, and we're talking. I've done cases for the Methodists and the Lutherans and the Presbyterians and the Episcopalians, and it's always the same story. And so what I try to do is what I've done and been successful in the past is representing these churches and trying to get them out of their property issues under something called a trust clause, which involves the First Amendment and religious issues. Okay. In a case called St. Luke, I was successful and established new law on how to invalidate the trust clause. And the idea there was the denominations would realize that churches could pull out of their denomination and they would lose membership, they'd lose property, and they'd lose the rest of it. And my hope was that would get the hierarchy talking to the churches so that they would come to some modus vivendi, some way of living together. Well, then what happened was the California Supreme Court basically struck that case down and decided to do a very pro-left-wing hierarchical decision. And at that point, if you look at the numbers, the mainstream Protestant churches, Lutheran, Presbyterian, the Episcopalian, have been hemorrhaging membership, and they are dying, and it's getting worse. In fact, the Methodists are now splitting in two, and it's entirely because the leadership has no skin in the game. Well, it's the same thing here. What you need is somebody on the board of directors who's going to say, yeah, we all hate John Delarose, but maybe we should act like decent human beings. Maybe we should act professionally. Maybe there's a value in civility and tolerance.
I wish that was the case, but I mean, unfortunately, the people who are in charge of this stuff can't even hold conversations with anybody who has any sort of differing view than them without being triggered to the point where they have a panic attack.
This is perhaps true, but at some point it becomes self-defeating. And if, let's say, you end up owning SFSFC, then they're going to realize, I mean, this is the way the law worked. This is the way it worked back in the 60s. People were racist and back in the 60s, and they didn't want to integrate their dining rooms or restaurants or whatever, hotels. But once you started hitting them with enough damages, then eventually they came around to realizing that the law of the land was non-discrimination, no segregation. And then over time, that established and people didn't believe it at the time, but eventually minds changed and people made a virtue out of a necessity. And that's often the way it works. And that's what I would hope would happen with these kind of cases is...
Now, see, it doesn't, though. See, Mike Glyer, who is like a 60, 70-year-old man, is wherever you're typing dick, he's trying to call Richard Dick, as a junior high sort of slander here. And this is the level they operate on. And so you can't get past this. I mean, there's no way you can't have a real conversation with Mike Glyer when this is like the extent of the way that he will go 100% of the time. Now, Mike, you can come on here and you can talk. We can talk civil, and you can show that you're willing to discuss these real issues with people who are on a different side and think differently than you. But I don't think you're capable of doing it, to be honest. So come on, let's go. We're waiting.
Well, and I would love to be able to see him come on and show that he's able to have a conversation that remains non-cliche. I mean, there's I went to UCLA Law School. It was a liberal at the time law school, and I like talking to liberals. There really aren't many liberals left, but I like talking to people with other views of things. Okay, I just don't like having constant shots being taken, accusing me of being a racist or stupid or that type of thing, mostly because it doesn't advance any conversation. It doesn't advance. It's meaningless. It's like calling somebody what was the word? I don't remember the word, but calling somebody a racist or calling somebody whatever the word Larry Correa, scumbag. It doesn't advance a conversation. It's emotionally fulfilling, but ultimately it sets the conversation back and doesn't help at all. So, I would hope that we could all just stop doing that. I can hope. I can hope.
It's not. Here's JJ. JJ also works from File 770. And I guess this was on Saturday. And he says there was no retaliation. WorldCon 76 rightly excluded JDA from the convention due to his promised COC violating behavior. I did not promise any code of conduct violating behavior, by the way. That is a total lie, and I never intended on violating the code of conduct. And WorldCon admitted in the deposition that they didn't really have reason to believe that I was violating.
And that is absolutely true. So Kevin Roche acknowledged that he was speculating that you would enter into the SFWA suite uninvited or after being told you weren't wanted there, and he had no idea that your so-called body cam was a cell phone, and he had no basis for concluding that you would have recorded private conversations. And by the way, I do this area of law, record all the time. The recording private conversation things. Recording in a room full of people is not recording a private conversation. You are in a position where people expect to be overheard. They have no assurance of confidentiality, and it's not illegal to do it under those circumstances.
Correct.
That's Penal Code 671.5. So, I've only had a few of those cases come up, but anyhow. Hey, so where are you now? Where do you want to go?
I'm right now? Here I'm just reading through a couple of the comments, maybe a couple of Twitter things. They were just unwise to make a statement which could be misconstrued as saying that the exclusion was made for racist behavior. That was unwise, but no, their banning me was bad to begin with, and they treated me as if I was inhuman, and that is the problem, JJ. Here. Well, this is the whole deal. Yes.
When you go further down, somebody makes the point about, because suddenly, good Lord, these people, they say, okay, we can act like total shits so long as we don't say anything specific. The worst thing you can do is to put it in writing, blah, blah, blah. Somebody actually said, wait a second, guys, have you never heard of practice, procedure, whatever it is, it was what did he P&P? I forget what he calls it. A course of conduct is what it is basically. Look, here's the reality. I'm gonna shock everybody with the following information gleaned from nearly 40 years of practice. You're not as smart as you think you are. You got that? I'll repeat it. You're not as smart as you think you are. Any clever little thing you think of that somebody that to get around the law and be able to say, well, I never meant that, somebody else has already thought of and has done a good dozen times before. Okay, I practice this area of law. Mm-hmm. I have clients who are fired for because they have a heart condition or they have cancer or they were pregnant or whatever. Do you think that the employer comes out and say, we are firing you because you have cancer? No, they never do. But you know what? We start putting things together. We put together before and after they learned of the cancer. How did they treat them? How did they treat other people who have cancer? And it's called pretext. So they can give an explanation that is not illegal, but that doesn't mean we have to believe it. Or they can give no explanation, and we can still say, gee, it's funny how all this happened after he announced himself a supporter of Trump. And frankly, juries want to know why things happened, and they're not going to accept, oh, it just happened. It just was just one of those things that happened. No, you're going to have to explain it. And if you don't have a better explanation, then we're all a bunch of left-wingers who hate anybody who supports Trump. Then that's what the jury is going to go with. So don't think you're so clever. Here's another tip. Act like decent human beings so you don't have to lie. God, is it really that difficult?
Aaron Pound is a science fiction reviewer who nobody pays attention to. When has JDA ever been reasonable? Second, if he thought he would win, sure. The relative values placed on a settlement always reflects the assessment each party's made about their chances of victory. That's not true here, Aaron. The settlement is just because of what WorldCon had, as we've already gone over. If JDA thought he would win, he would not have settled for any amount of damages that probably won't even cover a fraction of his attorney's fees. We've already gone over this.
There's no attorney's fees, and
there's no attorney's fees. Womp womp.
SFFC is sitting on gold bullion, and we could have extracted it from them. No, that's not how it works. I mean, this is the thing: is that they start. It just seems like so many of them are somewhere on the spectrum where they get into this echo chamber and convince themselves of their position, and they just build on it, and eventually it becomes unsupported.
Yeah, and then of course Mike Glyer actually did the right thing and told his guy. I
gotta say, I'm impressed with Mike. I have been impressed with Mike.
Mike can do this. He corrects the right thing sometimes. $435 filing fee, which is true, and that's about it. So.
I mean, go back up there. I want to say the following about Mike. Okay, so Mike did something nobody else did. He went and got information. He got some facts.
Research.
He went to the site, the website, the court site, and where it shows how much is being paid. Now,
everybody else just made up what they thought was the case.
Exactly.
Yes.
Hats off to Mike. But let me point out, you paid a $435 filing fee. And they paid a $435 filing fee. They also paid another $500 or $600 for filing the motion for summary judgment. You didn't have to pay that because they were the ones who brought the motion. So the costs are going to be higher for them. But nobody is sitting there going, gee, I wonder where SFC is coming up with all this money.
That's what I was wondering. Between that and they stated on Mike's blog that they did not have pro bono defense. So assuming that's true, they were coming out of pocket for this the whole time. So exciting stuff. And just just call me Kevin Roche.
Be reasonable. Be reasonable. It's not that hard to be reasonable.
I'll take you out to lunch, Kevin. We'll have a good time. Just settle down.
You know what? I think Kevin Roche could be we're talking after the deposition, you and I. Yeah. I think you and I could actually have a nice conversation with Kevin. I think that we could have a nice conversation where we're talking about old time. He's about my age. He knows. He didn't know when Larry Niven got the Hugo and Nebula for Ringworld, which is kind of disappointing. But he's of the same vintage, so we had read the same kind of books. So I wouldn't mind having my lunch, a beer with him or something.
Yeah, and that's fine. And Kevin, if you want to come on and just talk science fiction, this is an open forum. I will talk science fiction with you. Again, I just want all this stuff to dial down and everybody to actually just chill and have fun with science fiction again. That's my entire mantra: make science fiction fun again, and that's the deal. So so we have this guy Eric Ashley. I'm not sure who this is, but he's writing a lot, arguing back and forth with these folk on File 770.
Yeah, I didn't quite understand what was going on with him. Yeah, hey, go up to Lurker guy up there. That's the guy who was accusing me of being a nabob because
it might be on the last page.
Well, I think it's further up here.
Wow. Lesson from this case: harassment by lawyer works wonders. This isn't harassment. I was harassed. I don't understand how that, like, the court was ready to determine that I was harassed. They apologized to me because they even recognized that was a problem, that they were treating me poorly. I was not treating them poorly by trying to defend myself from attack. That's not how this works. If somebody comes up to you and tries to stab you, if you grab the knife and something happens in the process, that's not you attacking them. You were attacked, and that's what happened with me here. So
let me step in here one more time. Find Lurker guy. I'm doing this.
I'm trying to do that.
In any defamation case, you are right there. In any defamation case, the defendant can bring what's called a SLAP motion, strategic lawsuit against public participation. And what it does is it requires that the plaintiff immediately ante up and show that the case has a tenable basis for moving forward, so long as certain categories are met. So that it has to be a matter of public. It's designed to protect the First Amendment. Okay, so we faced a SLAP motion right at the get-go, and SLAP motions scare me. They do get granted. You don't have a chance. They don't have a chance. They don't have a chance of doing discovery, and so the other side can put on their best case, and you haven't had a chance to go in and prove the truth or falsity of their assertions. And in addition, there's a right to attorney's fees that the winner of the defendant who wins a SLAP motion can get, not the plaintiff when they win. Well, they did that, and we won right at the get-go, and on the same basis that we won all the way through. And so this was not a spurious, frivolous suit. If it had been a frivolous, spurious suit, they would have won their SLAP motion.
Correct.
Yeah. So there. Yeah. And so this guy here doesn't think it's an apology.
Yeah. So this person says it's a non-apology. So yeah. So for those who have not read the apology, it literally says, might have led people unfamiliar with Mr. Delaware's and his work to infer that he is or was a racist. For that, SFSFC apologizes. Literally apologizes. So for some reason,
and we take it that people who know you know you're not a racist.
Of course, because I'm not.
Because you're not a racist. The only people who could possibly be swayed by this statement, by the statement that you're a racist, were those who didn't know you, and that was really the problem. It's the people who don't know you. That's how defamation works. So yeah. And then he says here, maybe the volunteers can get that reimbursement. I know many of them can use every penny they get. I mean, maybe SFSFC had held on to some money that it was using to help pay for the defense costs. I don't know.
I guess. I don't know.
So, their attorney was saying, we have no money. Take these things. And then also, now everyone knows what lawyer not to hire after that completely screwed up MSJ with typos, errors, missing forms, etc.
What a creepy. We missed the creepy part of this. So I hope the 4K, having completely ruined his chances of ever becoming a prominent local author. By the way, I've sold, I think, 250 books today. So sorry, Lurker type. You know,
and then you need more money. He's looked up your house on Zillow.
After Like, how creepy. This person is stalking my fucking house. What?
These people.
This is so creepy.
It makes you sympathize with William Shatner when he said,
Oh my
"You people
God.
need to get a life." And then he says, "I guess maybe he can get a couple more bucks crying to niche RWNJ outlet." What does that mean?
Right-wing news junkie outlets, I think, is what that means.
Okay, whatever. Yeah.
But I mean, I can't believe this person's sitting here looking up. I don't know who this is. It's like, this is creepy. And Mike Glyer, this is one of his main commenters on his blog for some reason. So I guess that's the type of people he wants to court, rather than people who write science fiction. So
yeah, Mike Glyer apparently is saying that this would have been over an hour ago if we weren't focusing on his blog. Yeah, look, Mike, sure. Seriously, I love science fiction. I love science fiction. I have been a lifelong science fiction nerd. Okay, I always thought well of science fiction people. Okay, and then I got exposed to what, frankly, is a toxic stew pot of your commenters who made me regret that. Again, I said before, it made me appreciate why the jocks were giving us swirlies. Okay.
Well, hold on.
Nobody. Well, that's not true, Mike. Mike. Let me finish, John. Let me step in here and represent you, Mike. Sure. Instapundit covered this. Instapundit has a larger readership than the New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, MSNBC, and frankly all other newspapers combined. More people read Instapundit than read. You are, with all due respect to you, and I think you're doing a great job doing what you're doing, a pimple on the ass of Instapundit. God bless you. I mean, not you. I mean your blog. I'm not talking about you personally. I think you're a decent human being, and I said some nice things about you. So that's fine. But I want to go back to this. When I'm reading the comment.
I also wanted to point out that Bounding Into Comics, my favorite comic book news source, also covered this. And I'm putting the link in the description or in the chat here, just so Mike can know that this is not the case.
Bounding Into Comics is also a pimple on the ass of the Instapundit readership. So
I'm just saying, I care about Bounding Into Comics. So
okay.
Number two, it's also on Vox Day's blog, where I left a very nice statement also over the weekend. If you missed that, Mike, we can go grab Vox's post here, and I can reread my statement, which is important. JDA defeats WorldCon. And, I just wanted everybody to know we are in dark times, but there is light and there is good. Even though it can seem overwhelming, you can fight the good fight. You can win. It isn't easy. You can't be low energy, and you must never concede, but know that the truth will prevail. We follow the one true light of the world, our Lord Jesus Christ, and through him, we will be his beacon and bring about his kingdom. It's preordained. We have already won, and the lesson is to never be afraid of evil. Deus Vult.
That was a really nice and very inspirational sentiment you expressed there, except, of course, for your obligatory shot at Jeb Bush. I'm gonna blow Mike Glyer's mind and point out that the first presidential candidate I ever voted for was George H.W. Bush in the 1980 primaries. I mean, there was a good 40 years when I was voting for nothing but Bushes. I'm glad I'm done with that. So,
thank God. Bradford also says he covered it on his blog. So thank you, Bradford Walker. I appreciate that. So, yeah.
What a nice person. Shout out for Bradford. Yeah.
So there you go. Mike just lied right in the chat and got caught. Sorry, Mike.
Yeah. Well, and it's unnecessary, really. I mean, this is they're more interested than us. But Mike, listen to me. It's not good. Okay, it's just not good. Again, it's toxic. I'm a science fiction fan, and when I'm reading the low information, unintelligent and yet strangely arrogant writings of the people on your blog. Well, this is, I wrote this down for earlier. You know, studies that have been done that show that atheists are, well, generally, not always, but generally more advanced on the autistic spectrum. Okay. And likewise, far leftists are, as we know, diagnosed far more often with psychological disorders. And so I just got to wonder about left-wing science fiction fans. I mean, you have people who make a life out of it becomes their life. That's just a recipe for autism.
Yes.
You know, knowing the rules. I mean, the problem is, for me, science fiction was always something that I loved and I enjoyed. It wasn't my life. You know, politics is not my life. You know, I have 4 different things, you know: exercise, my Catholic faith, my belief in freedom, my job, my family. They all have to be working basically at all times. They all have to be working. Okay. Not one of those things, but all of them have to be working. And you just have I just have the fear that we're living in a world where, perhaps because of the internet, where the people who can obsess on something get an inordinately large microphone to amplify. And all that's doing is driving off normal people who actually live a life, who aren't entirely into this one thing. And that's not good. You know, I would love to go to Mike Meyer's blog and read the stuff on science fiction. I love inside game stuff. He actually posts obituaries and news. And some of them I read. I read a couple there a couple days ago.
Some of them are. It can be useful, and I wish he'd stick to that stuff. I really wish it would.
Yeah, and you know? Sure, and I forget who it was. It wasn't Gene Wolfe, but it was something like that. Harlan Ellison, maybe. And I went, oh, I remember that. You know, whatever. Hey, you know what I recently got? From Amazon. I got the DVDs to Starlost, starring Keir Dullea. Now, why is Starlost important in this conversation, John Delarose?
I don't know.
Because it was the Canadian science fiction show created by Harlan Ellison.
Oh, yes, I remember that. Okay.
Right. I remember reading about it back in the 70s, and I've never seen it, but I stumbled across it on Amazon. And so I bought it. I have it. I'm going to watch it. And that's, if I told this to anybody but this group, they would all do a head desk and say, there he goes again. Yes. Okay. So I'd love to talk about Starlost and Harlan Ellison and
that'd be
that
fun.
kind of thing.
I'd love to have a conversation, and you know, we could do a book club, Mike. You know, we could talk about like of old books. We could read Paul Anderson books and things like that. Can you imagine if we just like revitalized classic science fiction? Oh my gosh, how much fun could we all have? Oh well.
It might improve writing. Is it really George Peter Gatsis? It really?
George is deep in the lore of this stuff. You would get along with George very well.
Wow.
So, yes.
You know, and what did Keir Dullea do after 2001? Really? I mean, we remember his name, but aside from this, what else did he? A couple of appearances.
Yeah, not much.
Yeah.
So. Mm-hmm. All right. Yes, this is still going. I think we're about to wrap up. I just pinged Megan Fox if she wants to come on real quick. She hasn't responded yet. I'm kind of trying to filibuster. If she wants to come on, I'll keep it going. Other than that, we're open to questions. I think if you have any questions for a real attorney on this case who actually knows what he's doing, or if you have questions about Catholic theology, he's your guy. So
I'm that guy.
we can do both. Or classic science fiction, right? I mean, you could hit all those 3 topics.
I was going to say, every week I do a St. Thomas. We're reading our way through the Summa Theologica. We've been doing it since about 2001, and we're now 81% of the way through.
Wow.
I know. So somewhere in the next 10 years, we should be done with it.
So, I mean, do you just dissect paragraph by paragraph and really just drill into it that hard?
We do. What we do is we started reading the first question. So we read an objection, then we read the said contra, we read the I answered that, then we read the reply. And usually by that point, we're thoroughly lost and have no idea what's going on. So then we say, well, I think this is what it says. And then we talk about it, and eventually we get to the right answer. And then we move on to the next question. So, yeah, so it is kind of fun. Horribly nerdy. Nerdy, obviously.
Hey, that's a good thing. Hey, learning theology is a good thing. So, all right. Well, I haven't heard from Megan. How is racism defined by the law? That's a great question.
Yeah, well, racism is obviously any engaging in adverse actions against some person because of their membership in a racial group. Okay, so it's that neutral. It's not a white person treating a black person badly. It could also be a black person treating a white person in a certain way. And usually the certain way, usually what you'll have is you'll have racial discrimination in public accommodations, employment, and other areas. Okay, so it's not it's as a matter of law, it's not simply being in public and being a racist. It has to involve some kind of relationship. So that is how racism. Oh, the other one is it most definitely is not things like disagreeing with the Democratic Party about whether or not we should have voter ID.
Right.
That is not racism. Okay?
Oh my God.
As much as they want that to be the definition of racism, it is not racism. You know, there was a UC Davis, my alma mater, when I went to college, had something where they define religious discrimination as any action that stigmatizes or discriminates against someone who is not part of the Christian religion. So so instead of having a neutral definition, they actually had a definition that incorporated it. It wasn't content neutral. It was a discriminatory definition of discrimination. So
that's crazy. So
we live in a strange world right now.
I know we do. All right.
And I'm going to be suing people till they stop.
Well, God bless you. So thank you for being there, and thank you for putting all the hard work into this. I mean, I literally could not have done this without you. So I appreciate you a lot. And I'd love to have you on just for a science fiction discussion at some point. Maybe we'll come up with a
science fiction, law, culture. I'm up for it all. So by all means, yes, and you were a delightful client. Sometimes you were a bit problematic.
Don't use that word. Don't use that word.
Sometimes I'd wonder what exactly were you doing. You weren't the quietest client that I've ever had. Normally I require my clients to get off of social media, by the way. There's a lesson there.
I told you at the beginning I'm not going to do that at all, and I'm going to hammer this every step of the way. And I loved it. The File 770 commenters got really jazzed about that. They kept acting like my talking about the case somehow was going to influence the case, which, you know, I talk about it quite a bit. But again, I just demonstrated over and over, I'm not racist. They called me racist. That's bad. And that's, you know, there's nothing
in general,
wrong with demonstrating that. Yeah.
The reality is, if you're telling the truth, why change? Right. You know,
correct.
You know, now certainly people can take things out of context. Lord knows we've seen that. But if you're telling the truth, in general, what do I care? You know, if you're just saying the kinds of things you've always been saying, and you know, you're not a racist, and you're far too. Okay, Mike Lyer, pick this up. And quote me on this. John Delarose, you're far too smart for your critics. Okay, a lot of what you do is hyperbole. Okay, hyperbole and satire. Okay,
correct.
And so our culture, the internet culture, is very literal. You know, it doesn't tolerate. I mean, that's the half of the problem with Twitter and the cancel culture is people will say things like, I could just kill him. And then that'll turn into he threatened somebody. Well, no, he was speaking metaphorically and hyperbolically.
Yes.
Let's relax, shall we? You know, it would be just, but because they do it, we have to do it, and then they'll do it again, and we'll do it again, and all that happens is nothing good is happening. So let's just relax, shall we?
Correct.
That's my political. When I finally run for elected office on the "Let's Just Relax" party, that's going to be my motto. So let's just relax.
I'm supporting Kanye West and his birthday party for 2024 so far. So you know, that's where I'll be at. If you looked at, did you see his platform during the last election?
No, I didn't. I didn't go that deep into the weeds.
So you were not checking out Kanye's platform. I want to go over Kanye's platform real quick because you know, it's a beautiful thing, and here it is right here. It's from Kanye West 2020. Is this platform on here? Okay, here it is. The presidential platform. Tell me what if you disagree with any of this. Number 1, restore faith and revive our constitutional commitment to freedom of religion and the free exercise of one's faith, demonstrated by restoring prayer in the classroom, including spiritual foundations. And he gives a Bible verse to back this up also.
Okay,
what do you think about that?
Okay, so this will make Mike Glyer happy also. Assuming he's still there. Here's the problem with prayer in the classroom. In general, I wouldn't have been against it, but I have to recognize that as a Catholic, those prayers are going to be Protestant prayers. Okay, I'm willing as a minority in a largely Protestant country to go with the flow, but I would have been crossing myself as a silent protest every single time if it had been around. So
really,
there is an issue. There is an issue there. Yeah.
But we will not hide the truth from our children, but will declare it to the next generation his praises and wonders. Psalm 78:4.
You can write non-sectarian prayers. You know, yeah. you can write prayers that acknowledge divinity.
I don't think he was going non-sectarian right there.
No, I don't think so either. Okay, so I agree with
George sent a super chat. Joe King is the sequel to JDA's lawsuit. George Joe King. From my place on the internet, George Peter Gaddis. Yeah, so you can get George's book on georgepetergaddis.com.
Hey,
you and Kanye make a comic. I would love to make a comic with Kanye. That would be my dream come true more than anything. If somebody has a way to do that, I'd be stoked. So
here's what your listenership is. The book writers, at least, probably don't know.
Yes.
And this would impress them perhaps more, make them more valuable, make me more valuable in their eyes. I am actually a top 500 Amazon reviewer.
You are? Yeah, you're a big avid reader. Yeah.
I'm a big avid reader. And when I put a review down, it goes top 500 on Amazon. So
that's beautiful.
That just swings.
You've only reviewed one of my books, though.
I know. I need to move. That was Justified, I think. And,
yeah.
You know, but
Justified right now. I might also brag a little. Whoops, this isn't Justified. Justified has gone back up to #1 bestseller in religious science fiction fantasy, which this category is actually bigger than Christian science fiction fantasy because it actually encompasses all religions. So now I'm the #1 of all religious science fiction and fantasy right now. Thank you for everybody who's been supporting over the last couple of days.
I need to follow up on the next 2, right?
Yeah,
because it's a trilogy. It's a real trilogy, isn't it?
It's a real trilogy. Correct.
And if I remember correctly, the book Justified actually had an ending. It wasn't one of those books like so many where it just ends mid-scene, and so really the book is
just a split book.
One third of a larger book. Yeah,
this book was very much its own book. It was complete, but I did have a trilogy. You know, it's like the original Star Wars trilogy had its beats, but each one of those was its own movie, really, right?
Yes.
And that's what I wanted to accomplish with this and show that I could do Star Wars better than Star Wars and with Christian themes at the forefront, and that will actually be better and not lame. So
the other part is that you weren't beating us over the head can JDA's lawyer
review Joe King, which is available on Amazon for $5. What about that?
Amazon for $5.
Amazon.
You know what? I'm going to go and buy the book. If he can promise to have his people upvote my review. See, it's like there's a little bit of So is it Joe King? I'm Joe King, but Joe King.
Get it? Joe King.
I get it. I saw what you did there. Okay. And is that John Peter Gatzis?
George Peter Gatzis. Yes.
All right.
Is it actually on Amazon, George? Did you do that? I don't know.
It's Joe King versus the world's greatest average hero.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, it's a funny book. It's a funny book.
I have very few vices. I don't smoke or gamble or womanize.
I smoked Cuban cigars and drank 2 bottles of wine last night. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, so I'm taking the money I'm saving on that. And I'm buying Black Diamond Effect for $10. $10, wow. George Gatzis, really? Jeez,
$10. George is like, yes, I made my super chat money back.
Yeah, apparently it's the age. The grade level is grades 4 to 12. Hell, I hope it won't be over my head. Reading age 6+ years from publishers. Okay.
All right. I think we are at the end of this at this point. I don't actually want to read the whole platform, but if you look, he gives a nice Bible verse for every single point on his platform, and support faith-based groups.
No, I can get behind all. I can get behind all of this. Yeah, I mean,
all this good stuff. Yeah. It may not be perfect, but Kanye has a vision. So,
however, item number 1, the prayer is never going to be the Hail Mary. Okay, you just know.
Is it not? Okay,
it won't happen. Yeah, a prayer to Saint Joseph the Worker. So,
all right, everybody, thanks so much for tuning in. Thank you, Peter, for joining us. That was nice, and I hope everybody got a lot of good information. I think this was a good substantive stream, so that's good stuff. And Deus Volt is still available on Indiegogo. I'm going to be putting out the digital copies as soon as I format the new pages I just got and put those in. So either tonight or tomorrow morning, you'll be getting the digital version in your box. What I do is I put my digital out first so that if anybody spots any typos or anything, I wait like a week before going to print, and then I go to print at that point. So check your boxes. Definitely let me know if you got any typos or anything like that, because I don't want to print things with a typo.
And that's usually after you go to print, when you find out that you said poison the will and not poison the well.
The well. Oh, no. Terrible. And so pick that up. George gave me another super chat, so I'll read it real quick. Yes, it's on Amazon. Sci-fi superhero action adventure. Pure sci-fi. Joe King on Amazon. Lots of humor. There you go. All right.
Well, basically, my $10 purchase just went into your pocket.
It did. So yeah, since his are Canadian, he's
doing well on the exchange.
Yeah.
He's at like $2 on the foreign exchange rate.
Thank you so much. And we're going to be putting out a new novel very shortly with Morgan Newquist, who's a wonderful Catholic woman. I co-wrote a fantasy novel with her, and I believe we are going to. We're going to stream tomorrow and talk about that. So I hope you guys will be back. If you love good fiction, you should be here. Richard has one more question. I think we'll do this before we go. This is very interesting. You've heard this from Richard before.
Richard Fox, I believe that it is. It's discrimination. And it needs to be pursued. So we will be talking. Okay.
I did. I wrote a very nice email to Mary Robinette Kowal, the head of SIFWA. And I said, please call me. Let's take care of this. And she has not responded. It seems to be a very similar situation with WorldCon, where she's not going to treat me as a human, and we'll see how that goes. So,
I mean, if it was in the 1960s and SIFWA was giving it out only to whites, what do you think the answer was? Oh, by the way, I want to say one final thing for Mike Glyer. Hey, pick up your pen and write this down. When all of your File 770 people were saying my brief was badly written, I just want you to know the judge said the brief was well written, and he quoted from my brief when he said, calling somebody a racist today is like calling somebody a communist in the 1950s. Mm-hmm. I wrote it, And so I think it's very true. And it's a good place to end.
It is. All right. Thanks, everybody, for the support. With God's will and your listenership, we will be back.